President Trump wants to lower interest rates for Americans. And the housing market in many markets in America just entered what we call a neutral market for the first time in years. Hey, I'm Chris Lamm. I'm a 22-year mortgage banker based out of California. And in this video, we're going to talk about Trump's plan to lower rates, how the Federal Reserve is reacting to that plan, which isn't so good. And we're really going to dive into the housing market because we're starting to see some trends that we've not seen for years that are going to be really important for people to understand that are planning on buying a home this spring or selling a home this spring. President Trump in late January demanded that interest rates come down in a meeting in front of the world at the Davos convention. Now, most of you probably know this, but he does not have the direct power to control interest rates. And the only thing he can really do is put pressure on Jerome Powell, our current Fed chair. And in a recent meeting where Jerome Powell was asked about President Trump's intentions to get rates down, he basically said he would not comply and he's not going to do what the president wants. He's going to do what's best for the nation. Now, we could debate about the job that Jerome Powell has done. Well, he was the Fed chair for most of Biden's presidency. And, you know, this is the same guy that said we didn't have inflation when inflation started back in 2020. He called it transitory. And right now, our chair, Jerome Powell, is doing the best he can to try to combat inflation. Now, the control that the Fed has is he can change the federal fund rate. He lowered it several times in 2024. And one side note that's important to know, just in case you're not aware of this, is the Fed rate does not directly correlate with mortgage rates. In fact, there were several times last year that I had clients call me when the Fed lowered the Fed rate and they said, we heard interest rates went down. And in fact, mortgage rates went up several times when the Fed rate went down in 2024. In the most recent meeting in February, our Fed decided not to lower rates. And he didn't go out and say this, but there's a lot of people that don't think that we're going to see another rate cut for the entire year of 2025 because inflation is still pretty hot. But what are some of the things that President Trump could do to cause interest rates to come down? Now, we're not going to get into every single thing, but he has been very clear about his plans to combat housing prices, inflation. He's talked about things like deregulation, like trying to cut the red tape so that builders can replace properties by lowering taxes. And a lot of these things he's talking about, if they work and he can actually bring the cost of everything else down, if he can decrease some of the expenses at the federal government level, these things could indirectly cause inflation to come down, which would most likely cause mortgage rates to come down. But it's February right now, and it's kind of crazy. There's so many things going on in DC that it's really too early for anybody to know or to project how this is going to cause rates to come down. Now, if you want to follow mortgage rates and kind of get an idea of where they're going, the best thing you can look at is the 10-year treasury. The 10-year treasury can be searched on Google. You can look at it, anyone can find it. And depending on what day you're looking at it, the correlation from mortgage rates to the 10-year, they're usually going to be spot on. And this is something that mortgage lenders are looking at when they're trying to advise their clients on whether they should lock their rate or maybe wait 15 or 20 days because there's things that could cause that rate to come down. I've been saying this for a while and many of you know this, but the number one thing that's going to cause mortgage rates to come down is going to be seeing inflation come down. And whether you voted for Donald Trump or not, that is the one thing that everybody hopes that he can accomplish sooner than later because the cost of everything is very high. And until we see those costs come down, there's not going to be a lower mortgage rate in sight. Now, the housing market is a very interesting subject. We're heading into this spring, and traditionally the spring is when most home buyers are going to enter the market. A lot of sellers are going to come to the market. But right now in February, there's some very interesting stats that we found on some of the Redfin reports that have been really helpful for us. You know, in most markets right now in America, the days on market, meaning the amount of time that a home is on the market before someone buys it, has been going up. Now, during the busiest times of the housing market, the days on market could have been as short as 10 or 15 days. Right now in a lot of markets, it's up to 100 days, which means if you're someone that's going to sell your property and you put it on the market, it could take you 2 to 3 months before you get that property under contract. And in a lot of markets, they're calling that market a neutral market for the first time in years. And a neutral market is very simple. It's not a seller's market, but it's also not yet something that we would call a buyer's market. And just to give you a quick definition, a seller's market would be when there's less homes available and there's a lot more buyer demand, so the seller can really name their price because they don't have a lot of competition and the buyer's going to be competing to buy that property. Well, a buyer's market is the exact opposite of that. That's when there's a lot of sellers available and the buyer can go in and look at lots of properties and they don't have to worry that they're going to find a home and there's going to be 10 other offers written on it. This market right now is a neutral market where it's fairly harmonious that if you put a home on the market, you can sell it. And as a buyer, you can go out into the market and you can actually look at properties and preview them. And in many cases right now, we're seeing buyers get their offer accepted below the asking price. And sometimes the sellers are even paying closing costs to try to incentivize buyers to buy their property. One of the other stats that we've seen is that listings or homes for sale is up in every market in America. Where I live, it's up by about 15%. In many other markets, some markets in Florida, it's up as high as 50%. So if we continue to see this trend heading into the spring, I for one think that it's going to be one of the best buyer opportunities that we've seen in years. So if you're in the market or if you're planning on buying this spring, you may not see interest rates come down, but if you can get the property cheaper and refinance that rate later, that's really a strategy that buyers are going to want to focus on. You know, one of the biggest challenges that we've seen in our office, I work with buyers all over the country, and if a buyer right now has a home they have to sell and they're trying to purchase a property contingent on selling their current home, meaning that they can't buy a house until they sell, and they need to take all of the equity from their home they're selling to use it as their down payment on the next home they buy. In a lot of markets right now, that can be a real challenge because there are some home builders like D.R. Horton, for example, which is one of the biggest home builders in our nation, that they will not consider your offer if it's contingent on selling a home. So one of the most unique tools I've seen home buyers using right now in this market is a program that we call Buy Before You Sell. And this is a really cool program because what this allows you to do is take a short-term bridge loan on your current home where you don't have to make a monthly payment for up to a year, and it allows you to take your equity today to put it down and close on the home you want so that you can take the time to sell your current home and you won't be rushed and you can kind of take your time to market it properly. But most importantly, you can write the offer on the next home without it being contingent on selling your current home. So if you're someone that's in that situation and you have questions about it, feel free to get a hold of me. Or if you have any other questions or comments about the housing market, I would love to hear your questions or comments below. I hope this was helpful for you. If you got any value out of this video, please make sure to subscribe to it. And I hope you guys have a great day.